Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on whichever part of the world you are tuning in from. I'm grateful for life and very excited to be with you here this morning as we are going to be taking another fresh new look at the financial market. Well, it has been quite an interesting 24 hours for all of us in this community as we have continued to monitor how the US dollar had maintained its stronghold across its major assets since the beginning of the week. And of course, we did took advantage of these opportunities. But before we go into those details, let's quickly confirm that we are good to go this morning. So if you can see my screen and you can hear my voice loud and clear, please let me know in the comment section by typing in hi. So this will let me confirm that we are good to go. So I would like to see your feedbacks in the comment section. So as we get prepared to start the session. So let's see what we have here in the comment box. Okay, so I can see a handful of comments here. 8872 987 2262. Mr. Vane, good morning. Thank you very much. 465 395 572. Okay, I can see your comments. Jesoria 20. Thank you very much. 698, good morning to you too. Thank you very much, Carrie. Good morning and glad to have you around here with us this morning. So it's on this note I welcome you all to yet another promising edition of the Extreme Speed Live. My own name is Sharif Daramola, and for the next 1 hour I'm going to be your host, where we shall be delving into the financial market using simple parameters such as trend lines, key levels, and chart patterns to gain valuable insight into the historical price movement of the financial market. So since the beginning of the week, we have been monitoring four major assets, which includes the US All Spot, the USTech100, popularly known as the Nasdaq, and we've also had the GBPUSD, and finally the XAUUSD, which is popularly known as the gold spot, and all of which we have identified simple setups which we have been taking advantage of since the beginning of the week. So we are going to be deliberating into this in a moment. Now, before we go in, I would like to appreciate our newcomers in the house. I'm very grateful to have you guys around with us. And you might be asking, what is it that we are doing here? Well, as technical traders, we gather here on the Extreme Speed platform in anticipation of the New York session, where we come to review our existing positions if we have any, and use the information we are able to spot on the chart to strategically position ourselves ahead of the New York session. We do this on a daily basis, 10 a.m. UTC, 11 a.m. West African time. So I encourage you to stay tuned in so you don't miss out on any of these insightful ideas we shall be deliberating on throughout the course of the session. I also encourage you to be part of our subsequent editions, as the more time you spend with us here in this community, the better you get in understanding how things works here, and eventually be able to use the information you have gathered to make your own independent trading decisions. So once again, you are highly welcome on board. So with that being said here, let's dive right into the business. And as usual, the first thing we normally do is to check on the economic calendar. And for all of you who have been part of this, our journey in this community, you know how important this is, as these fundamental factors often manifest on the charts in technical patterns and price movement. By monitoring the economic calendar, we can identify potential correlations between key economic releases and specific technical patterns on the chart, hereby giving us valuable information needed to strategically position ourselves in such a way that we can capitalize on any potential move prior, during, and even after these economic events. So on the economic calendar here, we usually focus on high impact events from economic dockets that affects the assets on our watch list. And for this week, we are going to be looking at the US and the United Kingdom's economy. Now for today, Wednesday, October 4th, we have two high impact events coming in from the United States economy. Now, the first one is coming up in about 2 hours from now, and that is the ADP employment change. For those who don't know, the ADP employment change is released by the Automatic Data Processing Incorporation, and in fact, it is a measure of the change in the number of employed people in the United States. Generally speaking, a rise in the indicator has positive implications for consumer spending, thereby stimulating economic growth. So a high reading is considered to be positive for the US dollar, while a low reading is considered as negative. Now, if we look at the previous data here, it came in at 177,000 for the month of August. And now economists are projecting a 153,000, which is a sign that there is a projection of contraction in that sector. So we will be looking forward to what the actual data is going to be like. Will it be just as expected, below expectations, or even beyond expectations? Then 2 hours after the ADP employment change is the ISM Services PMI, also from the United States. The ISM Non-Manufacturing Index is released by the Institute for Supply Management, and it shows business conditions in the US non-manufacturing sector. It is worth noting that the non-manufacturing sector does not influence either positively or negatively the GDP as much as the ISM manufacturing does, and of course a result above 50 is considered as positive and bullish for the US dollar. Now, the previous month came in at 54.5, that is the month of August, and economists are projecting a 53.6 for the month of September, which is also on a lower side compared to the previous data. So we're expecting some contraction there based on what the consensus is saying. Now, what we are going to be doing here as technical traders is to use the timing of this event to position ourselves in such a way that we can capitalize on the move. And as technical traders, one thing for sure we all know is that the anticipation of this event alone has a tendency of influencing market sentiment, which would reflect on the chart as price action moving in a particular direction ahead of this event. So what we are going to be doing today is to look out for patterns and structures that will help us strategically position ourselves in such a way that we can capitalize on any move prior, during, and even after the event. So with that being said here, let's dive right into the business. And as usual, the first asset we are going to be having on our watch list for today is the USOILSPOT. And on the USOILSPOT, we have been doing pretty well since the beginning of the week. As you know, we have been selling the USOILSPOT, and there is no condition or criteria here that has incited any opportunities to buy. Now, let's look at how the week started for us in this community and what led into the idea of selling this asset. Now, at the beginning of this week, right here on the 1 hour time frame, we were able to spot an indecisive phase, a consolidation during the early hours of the new week, we saw how price was initially confined within the $90.40 level, and of course the $89.80 area to emphasize the level of indecision in the market at that point in time. And of course, you know how we do it in this community. Whenever price action falls into this kind of range, this kind of uncertainty, we have no other choice than to exercise patience, waiting for either the breakout of the resistant line of that range to give us an opportunity to buy, or the breakdown of the support line of that range to give us an opportunity to sell. Now, with the way things were going at the beginning of the week, this was where we were during our live session on Monday. We were around here, just right below the $90.40 level. And considering the breakout of this resistance line a couple of hours into our live session, I was of the opinion that price may come back and retest that structure to incite an uptrend move. And as a result of this observation, we decided to have a buy stop order above the $90.40 level, which unfortunately for the buyers, we never saw that position triggered, and instead we saw our price action dropped below our key level at the $90 area, broke down the structure, and in fact came back to retest the structure to give us a confirmation that sellers are likely going to be dictating the pace. And don't forget that we also had the ascending trend line, which we identified on the higher time frame right here, broken to the downside. We shall be looking at that in a moment, especially for those who missed out on our earlier sessions. So since Monday's trading session, we had continued to sell the US All Spot. For those who had been part of this profitable journey, well done to you for being on standby to capitalize on this move, as presently we should be running with over 250 pips in profit at this point in time. Now, for those who still have a sell position running right now, it is important that you move your stop losses right now. Let's secure those current sell positions while we look out for more opportunities in this market. And from the look of things here, based on this current structure, I will be suggesting that anywhere above the $88 area, which interestingly shares a confluence with that descending trend line, looks promising to place all stop losses on the sell positions. And one thing we also want to take into consideration while we are placing our stop losses is that we do want to be giving enough room for price action to breathe. So allow your stop loss to be as wide as enough so that we can still be in the trade if price does some retracement at some point in time before the downtrend continuation happens. So well done once again, and with a well secured position right now, what is going to be our next line of action for today? Do sellers still have the potential of pushing price to the downside, or are there chances that buyers could come in and take over this market? Now, in order to help us guide our trading decisions for today, I would like us to scale up into the higher time frame. Let's quickly run through that time frame to look at things from an holistic standpoint. And of course, for those who are not part of our live session on Monday and Tuesday, you have the privilege of being on the same page with us. Now, scaling up into the 4 hours time frame, what did we see here on Monday? Now, let's look at this closely. So right here on Monday, hold on a second, I will zoom this right in. So right here on Monday, what we did in this current market structure was to take into consideration the nature of price action since the month of June. And it is quite obvious that price action has been bullish since the month of June. And to emphasize the strength of the buyers here, we connected the series of higher lows, giving us a beautiful ascending trend line. However, something interesting happened at the beginning of last month as we saw a deviation from that ascending trend line, as we saw a new one come up here, and throughout the course of the month of September, this trend line was respected and guided this bullish momentum. However, at the beginning of this month, we saw our price did break down that ascending trend line for the first time in the last 1 month to signal a bearish momentum. And of course, one of the things we said here on Monday is that if price will break down that ascending trend line, then there are chances that we will see price drop into the $88 area, or probably into that major ascending trend line in anticipation of another uptrend scenario. And in fact, if price goes on to break down the ascending trend line, then this could incite a massive sell-off in this market. Now, with the information we've gathered here on the 4 hours time frame, we did scale down into the 1 hour time frame to understand how participants in this market has been reacting to this current structure. Now, on the 1 hour time frame, this was what we saw at the beginning of the week. We saw this beautiful descending trend line, which is going to be serving as a major yardstick in guiding our trading decisions for this week. Now, we saw that as soon as price tested that new high at the $93.90 level, price action gradually transitioned into lower highs. And when we connected the series of lower highs here, we had this descending trend line to work with. And one of our agreements here on Monday is that as long as price remains below that descending trend line, we shall continue to hold on to a bearish bias. And in fact, this trend line has been of major help in guiding our bearish decisions for this week. And that the only condition that will make us want to be buying the US oil spot is for this descending trend line to be breached to the upside. Now, also remember that behind the scenes, we have the ADEPEC summit going on right now at Abu Dhabi, Dubai, where oil promoters, oil producers, oil energy ministers are having a summit, and everyone is looking forward to sensitive statements that could incite price movement. Though I'm yet to have an highlight on what is going on in the summit at this point in time, but as technical traders, what we want to be doing here is to sniff through the current market structure to see or notice in due time how the market is reacting to this current structure, as it will be giving us an insight into how we are going to be positioning ourselves. Now, if we look at things from a technical standpoint here, we saw that in the last 24 hours, we saw how the $87 area had played a major role in negating all attempt by the sellers to break through that area. And in fact, we begin to think that buyers may likely be taking over these markets to break out of that descending trend line. However, if you look at what is going on right now, it appears price is breaking down that $87 level for the first time this week. Now, we are not going to be jumping into conclusion here, as the breakdown you're seeing right now could still turn out to be a false breakdown. So we will need some confirmations to happen, as this candle is still about 24 minutes old, so we still have about 36 minutes to go. So at this point, I'm not going to be advising us to sell right now unless you already have a profitable position right now. That is, if you have been part of this profitable journey since the beginning of the week, then you can afford to leverage on some of the profits you had made so far this week to test waters below the $87 area and see if it's going to work. And if the sell does not work, then we know that we are only risking some of the profits we made so far this week and not touching our portfolio at all. However, if you are new with us today, then I will be advising you to exercise patience and wait for confirmations before jumping into this position. Now, what is it that we are going to be looking out for? That is, if you are joining us for the first time. Now, the first thing you want to see here is the breakdown of the $87 level, scale down to the lower time frame, where we want to see signs that buyers are finding it difficult to break out of that descending trend line. And this would reflect on the chart as price retesting the $87 level, or even go as far as that descending trend line. But most importantly, we want to see continued selling pressure on our lower time frame around the structure to give us an opportunity to sell. So this is how we are going to be selling the US oil spot for today. Remember, for those who still have a sell position, I told us all to move our stop losses, and then we look out for more selling opportunities below the $87 area. However, in as much as we're looking out for selling opportunity here, you know how we do it in this community, we also want to keep tabs with the opposite direction. What are the potentials the buyers have in this market, and what is it that we want to see here that will make us change our bias from bearish to bullish? Now, remember, I shared this earlier that we have a descending trend line, which interestingly has been supporting that bearish momentum in the last 1 week. And the only condition that will make me consider buying here is for price to break out of that descending trend line. Now, at the point price breaks out of this descending trend line, I'm beginning to think of a momentum shift. Now, remember here that we are not going to be getting too excited, neither are we going to be having a buy stop yet, as we will need some confirmations to happen before we jump into that bullish move. Remember, we are still on a strong bearish momentum, and the breakout of that descending trend line could turn out to be a false breakout. Now, to find a confirmation here, we will need price to break out first of all, scale down into the lower time frame to look out for retest of structure, and continue buy pressure around or above the $88 area to join an uptrend move. And in fact, if price continues to climb higher highs, then we have the $89 area where a breakout of the structure will be welcoming more buying opportunity. And if price continues to climb, then a breakout of the $90 area will welcome more buy positions in this market. But at this point in time, I doubt if the breakout of the descending trend line will happen, as we will continue to maintain on these bearish buyers, looking out for selling opportunities below the $87 area. But if price at any point in time breaks out of that descending trend line, then we want to start considering a potential momentum shift. So these are my views here on the US All Spot. It's a simple setup we have here. Our center of focus for today's trading session is basically between the $88 level and the $87 area, where depending on how price reacts to the zone, a break above will welcome buying opportunity, while the break below will be welcoming selling opportunities. So you do want to be marking out these levels on your chart, as you will be needing them as a reference point to guide your independent trading decisions for today. So I don't know if you have any questions whatsoever as regards to my explanations, or you need further clarifications as to what is going on in this market, then feel free to drop your inquiries in the comment section below. So I will be taking the next 10 to 15 seconds to see if there are any questions whatsoever, while you can also use that time to mark out these levels on your chart, as you will be needing them as a reference point to guide your independent trading decisions. All right, so I see a couple of comments here. I see your comment 8354. I see your comment Zina. Good morning to you. I see your comment JBDU93. Thank you very much for checking in. 9063 Skyborn. Good morning to you all. So in the absence of no questions, I want to assume that we are all on the same page. So in that regard, we shall be moving right into the next financial asset on our watch list. So the next asset on our watch list is the USTech100, popularly known as the NASDAQ. Now on this pair, we have been selling in the last 24 hours, and price action had moved pretty well, as currently if you still have a sell position running at this point in time, you should be having over 240 pips in profit at this point. Now let's run through how the week started for us here in this community and what led to the decisions we made here. Now, the first thing we observed on the 1 hour time frame was this ascending trend line, a beautiful ascending trend line which captured the pivot lows since last week Wednesday, as you will see right here, and it further emphasized the medium bullish momentum in this market. And one of the things we said here on Monday is that we'll continue to use this trend line as a yardstick to guide our trading decisions. As long as price remains above that trend line, we'll look out for buying opportunities, and the only condition that will make us sell is for price to break down that ascending trend line. Then in addition to the ascending trend line was the fact that price was initially caught within a range here, and that was between the 14,860 and the 14,785 level to emphasize the level of uncertainty in this market. And of course, you know how we do it in this community. When price action falls into such a range, we want to be exercising patience, waiting for either the breakout of the resistance line to give us an opportunity to buy, or the breakdown of the support line to give us an opportunity to sell. And considering the fact that this zone around the 14,900 and the 14,860 had played a major role for selling opportunities in this market, we said here that the only condition that will make us buy is for the breakout retest of the structure confirming the strength before we can join a bearish move, which of course never happened. Now, instead, what happened was the breakdown of the support line at the 14,785 multiple times through the course of this week to emphasize the strength of the sellers. And during our live session yesterday, I told us all that chances are that the trend line will be broken to the downside, and if it does get broken, below the 14,785 will be an opportunity for us to sell. And in fact, if you had missed out on that first breakdown of the trend line, the market indeed was kind enough to come back and retest that structure, and since that moment, we have been selling the USTech100. Remember also we added more positions. Remember we also projected the 14,680 level, which happens to be the lowest point as at yesterday's trading session, where we said another breakdown of the structure will be welcoming more sell position. And if you had joined that one too, this one will currently be running with about over 100 pips in profit. So in total on the US Tech 100, we have a minimum of 300 pips running in profit on this asset. And for those who took advantage of this opportunity, kudos and well done to you for being on standby to capitalize on this move. Now, the next thing we are going to be doing right now, that is for those who still have a sell position running in this market, you do want to be moving your stop losses accordingly to secure this current sell positions. Now, from the look of things right here, I will be suggesting that anywhere above the 14,580 and the second entry area seems most appropriate to secure the current sell positions. And of course, you know that we do want to be giving enough room for price action to breathe. Now, with a well secured position, what is going to be our next course of action for today? Are there chances that sellers will continue this momentum to the downside, or are we likely going to be seeing the presence of buyers which could incite the uptrend move? Now, before we go into the details on what our expectations would be like, let's scale up into the higher time frame. So I would like to refresh our memories on what we saw on this chart at the beginning of the week. Now, right here on the 4 hours time frame, this is what we saw at the first day of this week. Now, it is quite clear that since the beginning of this year, price action has been on a strong bullish momentum, as you will see a consistent and uniform higher lows in this market. And when we connected the series of higher lows, we have this beautiful ascending trend line, which further emphasized the strength of the buyers. Now, something interesting happened a couple of weeks ago as we saw price break down that ascending trend line for the first time this year. And of course, this kind of setup following a lower high, if you look at the structure closely, you will see that price has been finding lower highs since it tested, hold on a second, since it tested the 15,920 zone, as you will see, and this led to the breakdown of that ascending trend line. Now, this is a signal that we might likely be seeing a momentum shift. Now, in addition to that ascending trend line was our key level for this week, which is situated along the 14,550 area. Now, if we go to as far back as the month of May stroke June of this year, you will see how this level had played a major role for buyers in this market. At every point in time the price comes into this area, we have seen how sellers have continued to struggle. We saw what happened here in the month of August. We saw buy pressure resume, negating all attempt by the sellers to break through that level. And in fact, in the last couple of weeks now, we have noticed how buyers have come back to reject all attempt by the sellers to break through that level. Now, the 14,550 area is going to be considered as a strong demand zone at this point in time, as depending on how price reacts to this level will determine what our next line of action will be. Now, if price goes on to break down the 14,550, then this will be the first time price will be breaking down the structure in the last 3 to 4 months, and it will be a beautiful signal of a downtrend continuation. However, if buy pressure continues around this area, then we might likely see a transition of price action into a reversal pattern with the hopes of retesting the structure that was broken a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of the downtrend scenario. Now, for us to have a better perspective into what is going on here, we really need to scale down into the lower time frame to look out for patterns and structures around this our key level to decide what our next line of action will be. Now, scaling down into the lower time frame, I think we were able to identify a simple setup on the 4 hours time frame first of all. And if I zoom right into this area, you will see how I made mention how the 14,500, that area around that key level, had played a major role in bullish momentum in this market, at least since last week's trading session. Now, let's see how the market will react to the structure. If a breakdown happens, taking out all the buy positions, then we want to be joining a bearish move to the downside. But if buy pressure resumes and continues, then we are likely going to see price come back maybe into the 14,800 to incite a downtrend scenario, or if possible break out of the 14,800 to incite an uptrend move. Now let's scale down into the 1 hour time frame so we can have a peep into how participants in this market has been reacting to that key level. So I would like this key level to reflect on our 1 hour time frame, so because this is going to be the major structure we will be using to guide our trading decisions for today. So right now we have the key level right here, the 14,550. So let's duly correct this and mark it out appropriately. So now, depending on what happens here, will be determine what our next line of action will be. Now, one thing you will notice here, if we bring out our line chart, you will see that we have a descending trend line after connecting the series of lower highs. So give me a moment, let me do it appropriately so that we can mark it out on our chart, as we will be using it as a reference point to guide our independent trading decisions. Now, if we bring back our candle chart, we can do some little adjustments to, okay, so here we go. And let's make this one a little bit lesser in pixel. Beautiful. So now we have a descending trend line we shall be using to guide our trading decisions for today. And what this simply means here is that if price continues to trade below that descending trend line, we shall feel comfortable in our sell positions, while we also look out for more selling opportunities in this market. Now let's look at what is going on around the 14,550. Now you will see here that since the early hours of today, we have noticed how buyers have been finding it difficult to break through the 14,550, which interestingly shares a beautiful confluence with that descending trend line. Now, if the sell pressure continues below the structure, we will feel comfortable selling right below this area, where a further breakdown of this level here had the 14,450. So we do want to be marking out this level too, as we will be needing it as a reference point to add more sell position. So we have the 14,450 level. Please do mark that one too out on your chart. So we give it a green color. Beautiful. So if price action continues to drop and it breaks down the 14,450, we'll definitely be adding more sell positions to our existing trade. However, in as much as we're looking out for selling opportunities here, we cannot ignore the potentials of buyers. Now, if price action continues in such a way that it finds higher highs, leading into a situation where the trend line is broken to the upside, then we might likely be seeing a momentum shift, a reversal pattern, maybe in the form of a what's it called, a head and shoulder pattern, something like this, where this becomes the head. We have something like this, then we could see an uptrend scenario. But most importantly, what we want to be doing here is if price breaks out of both the 14,550 and the descending trend line, then this will be a sign that the trend line may no longer have the capacity to continue to negate the bullish attempt. Hence, we will look out for buying opportunities above the structure. And if price continues to climb and find new highs, a further breakout of the 14,680 and the 14,785 will welcome more buying opportunities. So let's mark these levels out on our chart, as this area around the 14,550, which is our key level for this week, and the 14,450 is going to be playing a major role in determining where our price will be going for today. And of course, remember that we have two high impact events coming from the United States, which definitely the anticipation of this event would reflect on the chart as price action. So let's see how the market will react around the zone. A break above will be welcoming buying opportunities, while a breakdown below structure of the 14,450, the lowest point this week, will welcome more selling opportunities. So these are my views here on the USTech100 for today's trading session. Mark out those levels on your charts, and if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them in the comment section. Trust me, I'm here and willing to be of help in that regard. So let's see if there are any questions. I will be taking the next 10-15 seconds half. Hello, DJ Lucky. Hello, Bellalo. Good morning to you all. Glad to have you around with us this morning. So, in the absence of no questions, I want to assume we are all on the same page. So, permit me to move right into the next financial asset on our watch list for this week. So the next asset on our watch list for today is the GBPUSD, and interestingly, I have a buy position running at this point in time. As I had a simple setup, I was able to identify this morning. But for those who had missed out on this one, don't worry. It's likely we have some more trading opportunities that will gear us towards joining another wave of bullish momentum. So first of all, let's look at what we've been doing on the GBPUSD since the beginning of this week. Now, it is quite clear that we have been selling this asset since the beginning of the week. Remember, we took advantage of the bearish momentum as soon as we saw the breakdown of the support line of that range. Initially, we saw how price was confined within the 1.22080 and the 1.21760 at the beginning of the week, which emphasized the level of indecision at that time. And of course, you know how we do it whenever we have this kind of uncertainty in the market, giving us a beautiful flat channel. We want to exercise patience, waiting for either the breakout or the breakdown of that range to give us a signal on what our next line of action will be. And of course, we saw what happened. We saw price break down the support line here prior to our live session on Monday, as we saw here. And one of the things I said on Monday is that for those who had missed out on that opportunity, that we could wait for price come back to retest before joining. And if that does not happen, then a breakdown of the 1.212 will welcome selling opportunities here, which of course was what happened. And remember that we moved our stop loss yesterday to secure the current positions. And if you had done that, we were taken out of the buy sell positions earlier today. Now, if you look at the current structure here, you will see that in the last 24 hours, price action had gone into a range-bound trading activity. As you will see, price was confined within a range in the last 24 hours, and that was between the 1.2100 area and the 1.20600 level. And this was what I was able to identify this morning. And depending on what is going on here, I was of the opinion that buyers could come in as we gradually see the 1.20600 level transition into an accumulation phase. Now, this morning, I don't know if you're aware, the Bank of England governor, Andrew Baylis, had an interview this morning where he emphasized his stance on retaining the UK's 2% inflation target. And this stance here cast a shadow of caution across the market. And his statement has induced a risk-averse sentiment, as we saw prior to a couple of hours ago, leading market participants to tread carefully, especially when it comes to significant positions. Now, with the way things were going here, from a technical standpoint, it was clear that in the last 24 hours, that sellers have struggled to break through the 1.20600 area. As you will see, buy pressure always comes in as price gets into that zone at every point in time. And for me at this point, I was of the opinion that if this persists, the chances of a breakout of this descending trend line increases. And if a breakout of the descending trend line happens, then this will be a sign that the trend line may no longer have the capacity to continue to negate the bullish attempt. Remember, we identified this trend line yesterday and we saw what happened this morning. Price just broke out of the trend line and broke out of the 1.21 level, which happens to be the resistant line of this range. Now, for those who took advantage of the breakout, well done to you for being on standby to capitalize on that move. However, if you had missed out on this one, it's okay. We are still within the buyer's territory at this point. So, from a technical standpoint, when price breaks out of a structure that is the descending trend line and the 1.21 here, we expect that some point in time price is likely going to come back and retest the structure, where the appearance of buy pressure around or above the structure will be welcoming a trend continuation. So for those who missed out on the buy position, that is the breakout of the descending trend line, let's see if the market will give us a second chance in the form of a retest of structure. So we have multiple levels here that we can use to guide our uptrend continuation. So we have the 1.21 area, that is one. Then we also have this descending trend line, where if price gets to this area and we begin to see buy pressure from these levels, then we do want to be joining an uptrend move. And if price continues to climb high, the breakout of the 1.212 will be welcoming more buy positions. The breakout of the 1.218, of course, will also be welcoming more buy positions here. So while we are joining a bullish momentum, please let us be very careful, as this is more or less a counter trend opportunity. Remember, the market has been on a strong bearish momentum for a while now, and whatever buy position we are taking here is more or less a counter trend move. And please, when you're taking counter trend opportunity, you want to always be on standby to move your stop losses accordingly to secure this position, as sellers could come in at any point in time and take us out of that position. So while we continue to guide this bullish momentum all the way up, let's ensure that we move our stop losses accordingly as we ride the move. Now, in as much as we're looking at the potentials of buyers here in this market, we cannot ignore the potentials of sellers too. Price has been very bearish in the last couple of months, and the chances are that sellers will still come in. Now, what is it that we want to see on this chart that will make us feel comfortable selling and negating the bullish idea? Well, personally, since we noticed that the 1.2060 area had played a major role in negating all attempt by the sellers to break through this level, I would rather want to see price take out all the buy positions here before I can consider selling the GBPUSD. So what this simply means is that I will not be selling the GBPUSD unless price breaks down, retest the 1.20600 area. So that is where we want to be positioning ourselves for any selling opportunities in this market. So this is my view here on the GBPUSD for today. So you want to be marking out these levels, and let's see how the market will play out going forward. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and trust me, I am here and willing to be of help in that regard. So I will be taking the next 10 to 15 seconds to see if there are any questions, while you also use that time to mark out these levels on your chart. All right, in the absence of no questions, I want to assume we are on the same page, so we shall be moving right into the last asset on our watch list for today. So the next asset on our watch list for today is the XAUUSD, my favorite, popularly known as the gold spot. And since the beginning of this week, we have been selling the XAUUSD. And at this point, I have my positions closed. Remember, we moved our stop losses yesterday, and along the line, we saw price take me out of that position with roughly about 200 pips approximately in profits. Now, let's look at how the week started for us here in this community and what led into the idea of selling the XAUUSD. Now, the first thing we observed on the XAUUSD charts, that was on Monday, was this descending trend line, which we said is going to be playing a major role in determining our trading decisions. Now, we connected a series of lower highs since last week Friday, giving us this beautiful descending trend line, and we agreed here that as long as price remains below that descending trend line, we will hold on to a bearish bias, and that the only condition that will make us buy the XAUUSD is for price to break out of that structure. And in fact, since the beginning of the week, we saw how price has been respecting that trend line to the downside. Then in addition to that trend line, we had a zone here where price was initially confined, and that was between the $1,848.50 level and the $1,839.50 area. And we also said here that if price continues to trade below the trend line, then a breakdown retest of the $1,839.50 area will be welcoming our first sell position for the week. And for those who missed out on the first sell position, like I told you on Monday, prior to our live session, I told you I already have a sell position running. And for those who missed out on that one, then we want to be exercising patience, waiting for price to come back and retest that structure, which interestingly happened a couple of hours into the New York session. And since that moment, we have been selling that asset. Now remember that we also added one more line here, level at the 1,831, to maximize the potential of that bearish move as we rode that move all the way to the downside. Now, for those who still have a sell position running on the XAUUSD, I encourage you to move your stop losses accordingly. And the area where I will suggest you move your stop loss should be anywhere above the 1,825 area. And remember that you do want to be given enough room for price action to breathe. Now, with the situation we have here and a well-secured position, what is going to be our next line of action? Are we going to continue selling the XAUUSD, or are there chances that buyers will come in anytime soon? Now, remember again that we have two high impact events coming in from the US economic docket, and the anticipation of this event alone has a tendency of influencing the sentiment in the market, which of course would reflect on the chart as price action. Now, if we look at what has been going on here in the last 24 hours, it is quite clear that price action has been sellers have been finding it difficult to break through the $1,817.50 zone. Now, look at what has been going on here since Tuesday's trading session. We saw how whenever price comes into this area, we saw how buyers come in to negate the bearish potential. And for me, this is a sign that buyers may likely be gaining momentum behind the scenes. And if this situation leads into a scenario where the descending trend line is broken to the upside, then I'm of the opinion that we are likely going bullish. Now, let us look at what has been going on here in the last 3 to 4 hours. Now, this is the trend line we spotted at the beginning of the week, which has been respected consistently by the sellers. And look at what happened here about 4 hours ago after a sharp rejection of the $1,817.50 zone. We saw an engulfing bullish candle breaking out of that descending trend line. And for me, this is a sign that we might likely be seeing a momentum shift. And as long as price remains above this descending trend line, we hold on to a bullish bias. Now, from a technical standpoint, when price breaks out of a trend line like this, we expect a retest of structure to happen where continued buy pressure will be welcoming our buy opportunity. Now, with the way things are going right now, since price still remains above that descending trend line, I want to hold on to a bullish bias. That is, we are going to be buying the XAUUSD. Now, what I'm waiting for here is price coming back to retest the structure. Then I want to be joining the uptrend move. However, if price does not come to retest the structure and instead it continues to find higher highs and higher lows, then a breakout of the 1,825 level will be welcoming buying opportunities. So that is where I will be positioning myself here to capitalize on the uptrend move if price does not come to retest the trend line. Now, there are two ways to which we can capitalize on this move. Now, for those who have been profitable since the beginning of the week, that is, if you had been part of this profitable journey on this platform, well, you can afford to leverage on some of the profit you have made so far this week and place a buy stop order anywhere above the 1,825 level. However, if you are new with us this week and this is your first time taking a trade, then I will advise you to exercise patience, waiting for the breakout of the 1,825 retest of structure before joining an uptrend move. And if price action continues to climb higher highs and higher lows, another breakout of the 1,831 level will welcome more opportunities for us to maximize the potential of the bullish move. And if price continues to climb, another breakout of the $1,839.50 level will welcome more buying opportunities in this market. So at this point in time, considering the fact that price remains above that descending trend line, we continue to look out for buying opportunities here. Now, in as much as we're looking out for buying opportunities, you know how we do it in this community. We also want to keep tabs with the opposite direction too. So should in case sellers come in this market and take over, what is it that we want to see here that will make us change our bias from bullish to bearish? And in fact, you know that price action has been on a strong bearish momentum in the last 2 weeks now. And for me personally, for me to sell the XAUUSD, I would rather want to see price take out all the buy positions along the $1,817.50 level. Now, for me to sell here, I want to see something like this breakdown, retest of the $1,817.50 level to join the bearish move. But the way things are going right now, I doubt if a sell position will come in. But if it does come in and we cite a breakdown of the $1,817.50 level, then we have no other choice than to get ready to sell. But at this point in time, the way things are going right now, things are looking very, very bullish. So we have a simple setup to guide our trading decisions for today. So I encourage you to mark out these levels on your chart, as our center of focus for today is basically between the $1,825 and the $1,817.50 area. Now let's see what happens here today. If price breaks above the 1,825, we hold on to a bullish bias, and if price breaks down the $1,817.50 level, we hold on to a bearish bias. So these are my views here on the XAUUSD today. It's a simple setup, so let's be on standby to capitalize on any potential move at this point in time. So these are my views here. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to let me know in the comment section. So I will be taking the next 10 to 15 seconds to see if there are any questions, while you also use that time to mark out these levels on your chart, as you will be needing them as a reference point to guide your independent trading decisions. All right. So in the absence of no questions, I want to assume we are all on the same page. I see your comment here, 453, who is asking buy or sell. Well, I think I explained that earlier. I hope you got that one when I was explaining. I see your comment, 4006. Namaste to you. Welcome from India. 9063. Good morning to you too. Glad to have you around with us this morning. I also say 33876. Good morning to you guys. So on this note, I want to wish us all the best of luck today, and I encourage you to exercise patience and allow our structures to mature before we jump into any positions. And for those who are joining us for the first time, I do hope you are able to gain one or two things from what we discussed here today. And if you do, I encourage you to be part of our subsequent editions, as the more time you spend with us here in this community, the better you get in understanding how this works here, and eventually be able to use the information you have gathered here to make your own independent trading decisions. So once again, you are welcome, and I look forward to seeing you same time tomorrow, 10 a.m. UTC, 11 a.m. West African time, as we come here again to review how well these assets have been doing, and at the same time get ready for tomorrow's New York session. I wish you all the best of luck today. 4006, glad to have you around, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Do have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye-bye.